Hi, I'm Bill, and I played Doom 64 through to the end for the first time, and I'm here to tell you about the experience. And we'll talk a little bit about how this game came to be, why it is what it is, and I guess why it isn't what it really is. Hello, do you have thoughts about Doom 64? That's right, because this really is Doom 3. Come on, you. First though, I gotta tell you, Midway kind of messed up. This is their game entirely, all under supervision from id. And they made a good game, but they didn't do what they really needed to do to make a splash in the 90s when it came out. I was there. I remember Doom 64's release, and I didn't buy it. And I can tell you exactly why. Is that alright? Mm-hmm. Lots of footage of you being very cute, not very much of the video so far. Let's read this together, yeah? Midway, id and Nintendo had a bit of back and forth about what the name would be. id weren't the main developers of this one, and they stipulated they wanted to keep the name Doom 3 for themselves. Imagine if this had been called Doom 3 and it was a Nintendo 64 exclusive. It would have sold like gangbusters on the system and the ports would have come soon after, I'm sure. But I guess the id guys were already rolling around in cash at this point, or doing donuts over it in their new sports cars, that they didn't need to cheapen their brand for the sales. Maybe for them the creative side was more important. They wanted to be the ones to make Doom 3. Or they were just making a long-term sales decision because they wanted Doom 3 to start on the PC where the series had grown up, and they thought it would do better that way rather than on Nintendo's console. Either way, Doom 3 was off the table, and kind of fair enough, but this is Doom 3. It builds so neatly on everything Doom 2 did, and evolves the series just enough that this would have made a much better Doom 3 than Doom 3, which really wanted to be some kind of slower-paced horror game spin-off. It's not a bad game, but it never really felt like Doom to me. Doom 64, however, is very doomy indeed, and I mean that both positively and negatively. Nintendo demanded the game not simply be called Doom, because this was never intended to be a port and Nintendo didn't want to confuse people. Here they kind of failed, I think, because have you seen this? This is Duke Nukem 64. It is a port of Duke Nukem 3D. Carmageddon 64, a port of Carmageddon 2. Mario Kart 64, clearly a port of Super Mario Kart. Wave Race 64, just a port of Wave Race. In reality, most of the time the 64 suffix didn't mean that it was a port for the Nintendo 64. Duke Nukem 64 and Carmageddon 64 were really the outliers. Unfortunately, those games coming out meant that 64 didn't always indicate that the game was a new game. But Nintendo couldn't have seen that coming. These games released much later than Doom 64 in the Nintendo 64's life cycle. Quake's in the middle, by the way, weirdly. Here's my copy of Quake. No 64 on here. No 64 on the front of the box either. It's there on the back though. Also, the screen where you set up the controller packs calls itself Quake 64, but then on the title screen it's just Quake. This is Midway too. The same guys who called Doom 64 Doom 64 because it wasn't a port of Doom for the Nintendo 64, having no idea what to call their Nintendo 64 port, and it is a port of Quake. This world's so messed up, Minerva. At the time of Doom 64's release and through most of the Nintendo 64's life, the 64 suffix denoted an original game. It's still a rubbish name though. Its code name in development was the Absolution, and I was there in the 90s and I think I'd have bought a game called Doom the Absolution. Doesn't that sound cool? Doom 64's name problem, in my opinion, isn't that it's unclear whether it's a port or not, it's just that it's kind of a boring name, and it happened because of too many parties coming together with too many red lines about what the name could be, so they ended up going with the most middle-of-the-road, dull, meaningless, inoffensive name possible. Nobody liked it, but nobody was pissed off about it either, and that's how you do management. The main reason I didn't buy it though was the lack of multiplayer. Wikipedia gives you a couple of conflicting reasons for this from Midway. One is that Nintendo didn't give them the necessary equipment they needed during development, and another is that it's not Doom Deathmatch if you can see your opponent's screens. I used to go to a friend's house and play GoldenEye, and he had a SCART splitter, and 2 TVs, and 2 sheets of cardboard. There were ways, is what I'm basically saying, and those matches of License to Kill pistols were intense. But I see 2 ways to look at Midway's excuses. Combine them and you have, we didn't want to do split screen and Nintendo didn't give us networking. Fair enough, but not as likely as development time simply being too short and Midway were kind of making excuses. They were also concerned about performance and sure, I guess. But I don't know why they were the only Nintendo 64 developer unwilling to ship 20 frames per second multiplayer. I think all this though is just a product of when the game was developed. This was intended to be a Nintendo 64 launch title, and their source material for understanding what Doom was and what Doom had to be was the first two PC games. It had to be fast and smooth, even in multiplayer, and maybe they couldn't make that happen in time for the tight release window. They weren't to know that other developers would later ship games with laggy multiplayer and people would just lap it up anyway. Just like they weren't to know that the 64 suffix would get muddled a year later by GT Interactive's port of Duke Nukem 3D and this port of Quake by Chex Notes Midway. Still, at the time, Nintendo 64 gaming for me and my friends was all about multiplayer. I didn't buy Doom 64 because I bought Wave Race 64, I bought GoldenEye, I bought Duke Nukem 64, I bought Lilac Wars. I was a teenager, and the Nintendo 64 was marketed at teenagers, and the main two things about teenagers are that they like their friends and they don't have much money. The only game I had growing up that didn't have multiplayer was Mario 64. I even bought Fighter's Destiny, a much more mediocre game than Doom 64, because some form of multiplayer, even if it was just 2 players, was a base requirement of any game I bought back then. The sales were lower than they really should have been, with the game only shifting 316,899 copies in the US. To put that in context, Beetle Adventure Racing sold 329,364 copies. Remember Beetle Adventure? No, me neither. Being the 96th best-selling game on the system isn't necessarily the worst, until you factor in that there were only 296 games released for the Nintendo 64 in the US. That means they just scraped the top third with this, and this is freaking Doom! The series that revolutionized gaming just a few years prior. What happened, Midway? A bit too intense for you. Shall I turn it down? Critical reception for the game was also not great, and missing multiplayer mayhem was one of the reasons. IGN pointed it out in their review, but also said the most obvious problem with Doom 64 is that we've seen it all before. N64 magazine said Doom's original design is why it's never going to get the big scores anymore, marking the game down for its lack of originality. They said on release it's second choice behind Turok, and with GoldenEye on the horizon it must be third. Savage. Turok didn't have multiplayer either. Stephen James in Official Nintendo magazine said, Doom 64 is easily the best version yet, but it's been 3 years since the game was first released, and I'm beginning to wonder if it's time the old warhorse was pensioned off. Obviously didn't get the memo, the 64 means it's not a port. In hindsight, the late 90s was a weird time to be a gamer. Everyone was chasing the next big thing, and even though now we know Doom is infinitely replayable and hasn't aged a bit, for that brief few years just nobody wanted it. And that's how you get Doom 3. The age of the boomer shooter was coming to a close just as these games were getting ports and new games on the 5th generation of consoles, because consoles were now capable of doing what the PC had been doing for a few years. What's weird now, looking back, is that although GoldenEye and Turok were held up as the pinnacle of N64 shooters at the time, these games have aged far worse than Doom 64, which, honestly, I really enjoyed, even playing it with this controller. Every Nintendo 64 game has a certain amount of jank to it. If you watch my GoldenEye video, I get into some of it. And it's about the controllers, and it's about the tech, but also it's about that period of game design. GoldenEye's strict mission criteria, and awkward enemy animations, and realism-first level design were cutting edge back then. Doom's more freestyle, fast-paced shooting action inside the gothic hallways of hell was seen as old hat. All the way through gaming's growth, we've had this idea that those who came before us just did things the way that they did them because of system limitations. The Doom engine wasn't good at creating realistic-looking spaces, so that's why they set the game in hell, that sort of thing. No, they set it in hell because it was cool, and they designed the engine for the game they wanted to make, and then made it the best they could make it within the limitations they had. It didn't make big, impressive 3D models of dinosaurs that lunged out of the fog at you, not because they couldn't, but because that wasn't the game they wanted to make. And sure, game design is always limited by some degree to the tech that's available at the time, but not to the degree that we tend to think. And we know that because GoldenEye's game design has aged terribly. If you disagree, go and argue with me in the comments about my GoldenEye video. But Doom's hasn't. This will shock some of the gamers my age, but did you know the young people don't like Mario 64? They think it's jank. You know what? They're kind of right. I love it and I've replayed it a few times, including on retro game handhelds and the RTX enhanced PC ports. And probably you love it too, but the kids don't want it. The camera's kind of bad, the level design has been bettered since, the controls are fine for you and me, but they're unintuitive to those used to what came after. It holds up way better than it should given it came out in 1996, but in terms of graphics, controls and game design, it too has just a little bit of the Nintendo 64 Jank. Almost all Nintendo 64 games do. Doom 64 does not. Mostly. Because it's sprite-based and because it still feels like PC Doom, it really hasn't changed much at all. The Nintendo 64 controller has, but I'm not really counting that against the game, which still controls well enough as long as you change from the default controls, which don't let you strafe left while aiming with the analog stick unless you have massive hands. It's definitely an early Nintendo 64 game without the developer having really had enough support from Nintendo to make it what it could have been. I'll give Midway that one. But I figure they should have at least known that using Z to fire and using L to strafe left wasn't really going to work for humans. Is it like that? Or were they holding it kind of like that but with the thumb over here and sort of stretching this finger over to the Z button? That doesn't feel great. So I don't know what alien species they were considering with this one, but I make all my videos with humans in mind. So if you're a human, maybe you could hit that subscribe button if you want more content that's tailored especially to your species. I said Doom 64 is an evolution of Doom 2 style, and it really is in every way. Midway stepped up the presentation both in graphics and sound. Every weapon looks and feels meaty.
The dude's gonna come out? Oh wow, this chain gun is amazing! That's really satisfying. I like that a lot. That feels good.
And the enemies are all suitably menacing. Much as I love the original Doom 2 graphics, this is a nice little upgrade. The music isn't my bag, but I know other people really dig Aubrey Hodges' ambient soundtracks. You've played PlayStation Doom, you know what you're getting. It's not my vibe, but I can appreciate it. Certainly sets the mood while you're skulking around corridors, which is handy because you'll be doing that a ton. Because the other way this game continues the trend of the first two Doom games is that it has so many goddamn switch puzzles. Look at this! You come into this room, there are 4 unmarked switches, you know what I, and I'm sure 99% of other Doom players do immediately? Exactly. Bang the first switch without even thinking about it. Do that, and you've immediately lost access to the secret level accessible from here, and if you're playing the Nintendo 64 original, you've got no middle level saves to try it again. That's how I played it, and I just didn't get to see this level until I gave it another go on PC, and you know what? Still banged that switch the second I saw it, even when I knew I wasn't really supposed to.
I should save before I press a button. Because I don't, I just press the first button I see. I think this game requires you to be a little bit more thoughtful. Because I did exactly the same thing there, I remember it now, I did exactly the same thing there that I did when I played this on Nintendo 64, was I walked in, pressed the first button, and put no thought into it whatsoever.
But at least this time I had a mid-level save to roll back to. And I'm cool with the odd switch puzzle in a Doom game, but this feels like every level there is a switch somewhere that makes something happen somewhere else with no obvious connection. So you wander around until you find a switch, then you go back to wandering around to the other side of the level to try and find whatever the switch did to let you progress.
Yeah, I did press this. And something happened, something opened up somewhere.
I'm okay with this one where you kind of follow where the soul sphere is. That's cool.
Okay, 2, 5, 1, 4, 3, 2, 5, 1, 4. That's a long sequence. 3 again. Oh, so do I press 2, 3, 2, 5? Or do I just press 3? Okay.
And the few times where you can see the effect of a switch through a window or whatever, it's all good. And I wouldn't even mind hitting a switch then having to find what it did if it was just once or twice in the campaign. But I swear, it's basically every map that's doing this.
I have pressed an button. Hopefully that will do something.
Yes, it did this. Doom had switches, Doom 2 made them a little trickier, and Doom 64 just takes it to another level, and in this case it's a level too far, because it's all the levels. That's a good sentence, not tortured at all, leaving it in. The level design generally in this game is... it's good. It's more consistent than Doom 2, and I think overall ends up a little better, but it's not as good as Doom. There's a bit too much of that obscurity. Like here, when you fall in this dark pit surrounded by pinkies, what do? If you're on PC, you might notice the shadows on the wall look a bit like stairs, and if you hug the wall, you can climb your way back up. But if you're on Nintendo 64, you won't. Not a chance you'd notice that. You'd scrape along the walls, bashing the use button until you happen to be going in the right direction that causes you to ascend, or you'll just give up and restart the level, because on the Nintendo 64 original, I don't think anyone is noticing those stairs. The graphics are a little sharper and there's higher contrast in the remake. The graphical design in the levels is mostly excellent, in terms of architecture, set pieces, arenas, lighting, all that good stuff. It just pulls a little bit too much bullshit a little too often, you know? I really like the weapon and enemy selection in the game though. Again, it moves on one step from Doom 2 by adding exactly one weapon. What the flip is this? Big old laser. And the Unmaker is a really cool laser weapon you can upgrade in the secret levels. It's different for Doom and I really enjoyed using it. Ah, flip, cacodemons. Could have picked up that invulnerability, didn't. Didn't need it. It maybe needed its own ammo so as not to consign the plasma rifle to complete obsolescence, but it's cool, and being able to upgrade it gives it a new twist. Enemies-wise, I feel like Midway ran out of space on the cartridge at exactly the right point. They wanted to include every demon from Doom 2, but cartridges are teeny tiny, so they very intelligently cut most of the annoying ones. No Archvile or Chain Gunner! Hooray! Also no Revenant though, which I guess is kind of a shame, but at least they have a cube in one of the levels that shoots its homing missiles, so we still get to enjoy those. We've got Arachnotrons, but we don't have the Spider Mastermind. It's exactly the right amount of enemy variety. And there aren't as many first target monsters as in Doom 2. You know the kind. The ones you have to target instantly, ignoring everything else because that one enemy is going to get out of control real fast if you don't. Doom 64 has one of them, and it's the Pain Elemental, and that's the right number. I'm not the biggest fan of the Pain Elemental, but it's used well here, like in this level where it drops down menacingly from the sky. I mind it less in Doom 64 than I did in Doom 2. So should you play it? Yeah. Should you play it on Nintendo 64? No. I did because I'm a big idiot. The modern version on PC or Switch or probably on other things is great. Night Dive Studios did a great job as they often do, and as I write this script it's only €2 on GOG. You got €2, don't you? The sale probably isn't on now as you're watching this, but it'll probably come back. Really the only reason to play this on Nintendo 64 with its awkward controls and no mid-level saving is to appreciate it in its historical context. Maybe you're nostalgic for it, or you want to play the original release to better understand the history of the game, or maybe you asked your community which version you should play, and they just wanted to see you suffer. Thanks for that. Anyone else, play the Night Dive Studios one. The bottom line with Doom 64 is it's great because it's more classic Doom after you've finished the Ultimate Doom and Doom 2. That's why you should play it. It's a better Doom 3 than Doom 3. Now it's time for a channel update. Please watch the channel update. The Discord's now open to everyone. You'd all know I'm incredibly grateful to all those who support the channel financially, especially Liam, Sir Musty, Soul in Sadness, Thankmar, Ultra Muffin and Visual Novel Archive. But I want to build a bigger community around here, and as we say, gates open, come on in. Link in the description and I'll see you there. Of course, if you want to support the channel, either on YouTube or on Patreon, you'll receive wondrous benefits like seeing videos early, and exclusive updates and other little treatos. But mainly, you're encouraging me to keep going, and I might be able to reduce my hours at my day job so I actually have time to do this. Because I haven't posted much this year, and it's not because anything bad's happened. On the contrary, life's pretty great. The problem is that work's been hectic and draining, and even the stuff that I enjoy doing, like gaming, swimming, travelling, music, whatever, takes a lot of energy too, and I'm pretty sure I don't have the reserves most people have. But if this channel starts doing a little better, I could afford to reduce my hours at the day job and devote one day a week to doing YouTube, rather than having to fit in bits of scripting here and there sort of between everything else, and I think that's probably the biggest reason for you to support the channel. I don't think it's going to take many more memberships to get me there. And it'll be really cool for me, and maybe for you too, because you'd get to see more regular uploads. And more time to spend together, appreciating games like Doom 64 in and out of their historical contexts. But hey, even if you're just dropping by and you're not subscribed or anything like that, I still appreciate you. Thanks for joining me on the Retro Sofa.
I just want to see if NVIDIA Broadcast knows what to do with this. No, not really. No, kind of.